Oh,
I
so here we
see
go.
you.
Excellent. Now I just gonna take the headphones off because I hear myself, and that's but with a delay. So that's really annoying because I know how I sound like
Yeah, no, it's
in the
fine.
studio.
There's no delay in the great state of New Jersey.
Excellent. So to a person who has never heard of My Damn Channel, might be one. How would you explain the concept of My Damn Channel? And as a second question, has it changed since you started it as a tagged as a YouTube for professionals?
Yeah. So when we started in 2006, which is 189 internet years ago, uh, we thought a few things might happen. First is that most of the videos that were up on YouTube at the time were just homegrown, family-made videos. We thought it might be a great idea to take some of the people that were on both sides of the camera in television and in film and bring those people to the freedom of the internet where you and I can have this conversation without delay, many oceans and countries away from each other. This is the future. And when the future became available to us technically, most of the content was crap. So we said, look, let's just go out and call ourselves My Damn Channel, because one by one, we'll hire some of the best communicators in show business and give those people both money and freedom to do whatever the fuck they want, and entertain people in a way that you'd never seen before on television, because television is filled with executives wearing very nice clothes, telling the talent to do exactly what the executives want the talent to do. And that's now becoming quite an antiquated idea when you and I have the freedom that we have to be able to reach an audience as big as anyone can build or as small as we would like it to be. That's actual freedom of speech. And that's what My Damn Channel stood for and still does.
How did you come up with the name My Damn Channel? Was it just out of frustration saying, wish I had my damn channel? Or how did that come about, that name, which is very catchy?
Yeah, the naming process for anything, even in rock bands, I think is sometimes the hardest part, right? You know, a bunch of guys can get together and know they have a unique sound, but then somehow they end up calling themselves the Cars, you know, and then 30 years later we think that that's kind of normal, but what a stupid name. So you know, no one ever really loves their name. I don't know if you were a kid that, you know, at the age of 5 or 6 wished that did you do that? Did you wish that you had a different name after your parents gave you the name that they gave you?
I didn't come here to be insulted, but you're absolutely right. I hate my name, and I would rather
No, that's
you
not an
refer to me
insult.
as Tony Tornado and not Torsten.
No, I wanted to be called Dave. You know, I mean, I think you've got a great name, but I do think that every kid, my kids are 8 years old, and now they're starting to say, I wish I was called something else.
Those brats.
So, so we finally settled on those 3 words in order to say 2 things. Maybe there was a teeny bit of frustration that we discussed a minute ago based on having to work for crazy executives in old show business. But we mainly did it because of what we said 5 minutes ago. We wanted the artists, each person that we hired, to feel and own their own creative freedom. That's the reason why we call it My Damn Channel.
You said you wanted to pay the artist, which means your severance package must have been quite big, or did you buddy up with a huge company who would back that endeavor?
Oh no, we didn't buddy up with anybody. We used our own money for my business partner and I hired a man named Warren Chow. And so the 2 of us did this ourselves for quite a while with our own money and our family's money. Then little by little, we started to take on investors. But the decision that we made with every single dollar that came into the company was that the most important place the money would go is to actually paying the talent. See, most other websites, including YouTube, say that you have the honor of giving them yourself, your content, for free, and then they give you the promise in return that they will give you 50% of the advertising revenue that they may or may not make. So sometimes I'm an optimist and sometimes I'm a pessimist, but most of the time I'm a realist. And I didn't think that if I asked you to work your ass off every single day, that you were going to make any kind of significant money from that so-called revenue share. So I did a very different thing in 2006 and 2007. I brought people into my office and said, I'm going to be paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars to create the very best content you can create. Artistically free, as long as it's successful. And if it works out and we can build an audience together, then I can figure out how to make money on that audience. And I should let you continue to do the work that you want to do. And that's how we founded this company. I mean, I used to think about that old photograph from United Artists with, you know, the earliest legends of cinema, right? They got together in a radical idea, thinking that what if the artists were the management company? That's so rarely done in rock and roll and film and in television, but we may be one of the only places where that's true. I don't have a college degree. I'm not a venture capitalist. I don't own half of Wall Street, but I do love making rock and roll and comedy, and I've done that my whole life. So why not get other people who want to do that without the bullshit of a major media company? And there's more bullshit than you can imagine that stops great content from being made by rich people who are interested more in their own bank account than in your fucking art. They don't care. They don't. They're doing it for the money, and that's called major corporate media. But the internet has room for other pieces of the pie, right? I mean, you know, you have something to contribute. You're doing it. I'm doing it. So wouldn't it be great if we could have, I don't know, $5 or $10 to do that? You know, that's a very simple idea, but the technology has afforded us that freedom to have that idea.
And all of the people who started with you are still with the channel. I remember one of the first ones you signed was Don Was of Was Not Was fame. There was a channel which, by the name, you wouldn't get what they are doing. It's called You Suck at Photoshop. And there was Rainy Days, as I recall, and they are all still with you. And of course, many, many others have come. You just signed exclusively, I think, a young talented lady named Sarah Forsberg, born in Finland. Would you care to talk about the artists a little bit, the ones who started and who came later?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, Don Was, for any great music fan, is one of the best producers in music, has always been, and is an artist. And as we said just 2 minutes ago, one of those rare examples now where an artist is running a major media company. Don Was is now the head of Blue Note Records in the famed Capitol Records Tower. And, you know, just somebody who has been artist first his entire life, you know, the kind of person that when he collaborates, you don't feel like you're collaborating with an accountant, you're collaborating with a true, honest artist. And so that made it pretty easy to make him the first person, and really the only person we ever hired to run the music part of our company. So we have the greatest respect for Don. And then the next person that was part of our founding fathers and mothers was a man named Harry Shearer. And Harry has
Spinal Tap.
Well, Spinal Tap and about 16 other full-time pieces of the pop culture that all come from this one amazing mind. I mean, he was an and is somebody who's done a very free-form radio show every single weekend for almost 30 years, and over 30 characters on The Simpsons have been Harry and continue to be Harry every single Sunday night. He's a musician that makes music constantly. He's a writer that writes books constantly. And he's also in the United States, and I think globally, he spends a tremendous amount of time overseas, one of the greatest political satirists that the world has ever known. I mean, when we started in 2007, we knew that the 2008 United States presidential campaign was going to be a game changer. And there was a very short list in this country for political satirists: Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, with the show that is no longer on the air called The Colbert Report, and maybe a third gentleman that you may or may not know named Bill Maher, who has a lot to say politically every week and is also humorous about it. So Harry was the first person that we hired at My Damn Channel, because there isn't a more incisive mind for the politics that scarily affect our lives in a dangerous way every day. That's the kind of danger that needs to be communicated by someone who is a truly skilled surgeon and an honest journalist / comedian, and that's Harry. You know, he's amazing. So I mean, we've always looked to the smartest and most free-thinking people that we could, with everyone that we've ever hired. Daily Grace Helbig is someone that we hired as an unknown, and now is easily one of the most known people on the internet because of her bravery and her honesty and her relentless work ethic. Someone that sat here just like you and I are doing, in the place where we live, creating this concept called a job that meant talking to millions of people every single day. And Grace did that without almost ever taking vacations or holidays. I mean, I would beg her to take a week off and rest her soul, and she said, no, that's okay, I need to talk to my audience every single day. And I would say, well, you just coughed, you sound like you have a cold, will you take a sick day? No, that's okay. And I've almost never seen anyone with that kind of commitment. And look what it did. She committed herself to becoming, you know, one of the greatest communicators of the new world. And that was done just by guts and determination and hard work. It's an amazing achievement.
The idea to My Damn Channel must have been in your head while you were still with CBS Radio. Were you actually straying with your thoughts while still employed by CBS Radio?
Well, I wasn't just straying. I was the president of CBS Radio, so I decided that the odds were I would only hold a job like that for 18 months, maybe 2 years. They fire them every 2 years. I knew that that was the outcome. It's always the outcome if you work in radio in the United States, with the exceptions of one or two people I know really well, a guy named Kevin and a guy named Norm. Everyone else gets fired. Everyone gets fired. Kevin Weatherly. Wow, you are psychic. Kevin Weatherly runs K-Rock in LA, and you know, is arguably one of the most successful radio programmers of all time, because his station sounds fucking great. When I worked there in the 1980s, and it sounds equally great this morning. There's very few.
You were with K-Rock in Los Angeles?
For a short time, yeah, in the late 80s. It's a great radio station. But, you know, I mean...
The radio station.
Yeah, so it takes the kind of commitment that a guy like Howard Stern brings to media, to be able to actually have an audience that you deserve. And the way that a lot of people in Howard's footsteps found that audience was by being completely fearless and completely honest. And that's sadly rare in the world that has politicians filling the screen with most of the time. I mean, we don't own or watch a television. We haven't had one for 8 years. And I worked in television most of my life. But if we had a television, I think we both know what would be coming through it, and it wouldn't be this show. This show wouldn't be on television. It's not formatted enough. We're not dressed fancily enough. Although I think our shirts are great.
Almost iron, in my case. You mentioned Howard Stern. A huge atom bomb, a nuclear deterioration hit the American radio scene in 2005, and you were immediately affected, or directly affected rather. Would you care to talk about the year 2005 when a huge announcement affected the what's it called, the stock exchange for then Sirius Radio? Would you care to talk about it?
Yeah. Well, he had this idea. Howard Stern had this idea to go from CBS Radio, where I was, to the stratosphere, right, to satellite radio, and it was one of the strangest exits in the history of media, because he made the announcement a full 18 months before he was to leave. And there was a debate that could go on maybe for hundreds of years about why Les Moonves, who runs CBS, decided to allow him to stay on the radio making money for CBS for 18 months while he told everyone in the radio audience that he was going to the anti-radio competitor called satellite radio. That was quite a business decision, and one that could either be looked at as completely brave or completely insane. And so I was then tasked with the job by Moonves and others to figure out what to do after Howard left. And we could go on for hours and hours about that, but the best version of it, which sometimes gets put up on YouTube every once in a while, is the full version of the story, which I told to Howard when I was on his show. This was on, I remember the date because it happened to be April 20th, and it was April 20th of 2010. We finally told each other the story, which is, pretty fun if you ever find it. But there's no one like him, and there never will be. And everyone who's ever tried to follow in those footsteps knows that. He's the bravest, most successful broadcaster of all time.
King of all media, as he humbly calls himself. Actually, it started as a joke, but
it ended up being true. Yeah,
he was actually just reacting to Michael Jackson, right? Calling himself the king of pop. Our little-known band we may talk about a little later about. It's not the band Little Boy Blue and the Cockroaches, but another one. It will come to my mind.
That's funny.
So you had to react, and it was your task to come up with I want to say counter offer, but you had to counter the paid, the Sirius paid channels. So you geniusly thought about a name, which I thought was brilliant, Free FM.
Oh yeah. Well, we decided we couldn't replace him with a person. So we decided to replace him with an entire new idea. And the idea was created with respect and honor of what Howard represented, which was free form, honest, open talk, with the exception in the United States of only 7 words that you're not allowed to speak. And George Carlin, may he rest in comedic and global heaven, can teach anyone who doesn't know what all 7 words are. But with those exceptions, I thought that radio should get back to that idea, right? A very hippie 1960s idea that we, the next generation, the proprietors of pop culture, should be able to speak our minds freely. And if we couldn't replace Howard with one person, then I created 12 radio stations all across America, each of them filled with a whole lineup of personalities that we thought had first the brains and then the balls to be able to turn the mic on and speak freely for, in most cases, 4 hours. And there's one of them, Adam Carolla, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, Adam, you know, had an incredible run on a show called Loveline that aired for, I forget the exact number of years, might be, I think, at least
11.
about 15,
No, 9 to 10.
9 or 10 years before I hired Adam. You know, we had some great conversations with Jon Stewart when Howard Stern decided to leave, and he ended up being my best advisor. And Jon said to me in his kitchen one day, hire Adam. And I said, Carolla? And he said, he's the guy. I said, well, I agree with you, but I also want Jimmy. And by making that crazy statement, Jimmy Kimmel, at the time that Jon said that to me in his kitchen, Jimmy was already on television at 5 minutes after midnight every single night. So he was pretty busy. But Jimmy first discovered Adam, and I thought that if we were going to give Adam as many as 4 hours a day, 5 days a week on the radio in Los Angeles, that I wanted Jimmy to be my partner in that project. So we hired Jimmy for a very big contract to be our official friend and producer. And we hired Adam to do most, if not all, of the talking. And I say that with love because I know you're a fan. Adam
Peace and love. Peace and love.
Adam talks. And Jimmy and I hired a large staff with Adam. You know, we probably put about 15 people together to build that great radio show. And Jimmy would wake up every day at the crack of dawn and sit there listening with me to every single minute of that show. And we worked as a team and did everything we could to keep management out. We all practically barred the door and said, no one is allowed to talk to us for 6 months until Adam feels that he's building the radio show that he wants to build. Leave us alone, go away, do not speak to us. And that was my job for a while. And then when they finally fired me, I sat down with Adam for lunch one day and I said, here's the deal. I just got fired. That means they're coming for you next. And so I went to my damn channel and he went to his garage. And now in the world, Adam Carolla is the only person making millions of dollars, millions on podcasting. And we're all trying to figure out how to follow in his footsteps because wouldn't that be nice if we could make a few bucks for having these conversations? But he's brilliant and one of the funniest and most incisive minds in comedy. You know, we said, the last thing I'll say about Adam is that there was a rumor going around that he was lazy when I went to interview him for the first meeting. So we sat out at his pool and drank a bunch of beer. And I said, the rumor is you're lazy. And he goes, yeah, that's not true. You know? And if there were ever any truth to it, if you follow his career now, you'll see that he's making, you know, major Hollywood films, writing constant books, touring the world, selling out huge theaters, building an entire network. I mean, Adam, in some respects, has become, you know, the hardest working man in show business.
Sorry, Mr. Brown.
It's an amazing career and you know, tenacious, just tenacious and brilliant, that guy. And fearless, which, you know, again, that's not something that's an easy characteristic to own, you know, when you're in media, because you always feel like somebody's going to come tap us over the shoulders and go, you suck, you're done. You know, Adam has no worries about that because he is the network. He created it for himself so that he wouldn't have to work for jerks like CBS. It was pretty brilliant.
He's the best. He's the best at producing while he speaks. Do you know anybody who can? There are some who can roll with him. Fitzdog, Greg Fitzsimmons can do it. Dana Gold can do it, and a few others. But he's the champ, an undisputed champ in real-time comedy. Nobody can match him, actually.
Well, it's not something a lot of people want to do. Let's just say that. I mean, I think there are plenty of people that are brilliant and funny, but I offered the job to people like Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle. There isn't a single one of those guys who was interested in turning on a microphone and talking to the world for 4, or in Howard Stern's case, sometimes 5.5 hours per day. I mean, imagine how much content that is. And Larry David sent me an email, which I still have somewhere. And, I wrote him something that told him how I felt about him and that I would love to talk to him. And he wrote back, very, 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 very flattered. And that was all he said, But that's the point, that there are very few people like Adam Carolla who can talk that much and be interesting. Mark Maron certainly can, but there aren't a lot.
The whole endeavor worked actually the longest from all of them. There were 3 time zones. You had different people on, and the West Coast feed with, I think, 9 stations worked out the longest till February 20th, 2009. And then the whole station was flipped into AM format in Los Angeles. And ever since, what's your assessment of radio ever since they flipped the last, and in my humble opinion, which doesn't mean anything, greatest talk station ever was Keller's X, Nuevo Cente Punto Uno in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. What happened afterwards?
Well, media is very cyclical, right? I mean, the reason why most movies that you'll go see in the cinema tonight are derivative imitations of other movies that already existed, or sequels, or procedurals on television. There's all these television series that are basically the same series. Something awful has happened and we have to figure out how to fix it. So there isn't a lot of originality in Hollywood. When something's successful happens, it's usually imitated. So I guess the best thing I could say about the current state of radio, and one of my smartest and greatest coworkers ever is responsible for a lot of this content, but there's a man named Chris Olivero who worked with me all of my days at CBS Radio. He realized that there was a great desire for a lot more sports talk on the radio. And that has become an incredibly successful format now across the country, not just for CBS, but for others as well. We both would rather listen to our music without massive commercial interruption. So radio has some definite problems with that idea, and they don't yet know how to fix it. They need to figure out how to diversify into the places that some of us have gone, and you and I are doing now, which is live, truly interactive media. That's available to radio. For some strange reason, radio seems to be afraid of it, and so you turn it on a Tuesday in America, and they do things on classic rock stations called 2 for Tuesday, where they play the exact same 2 Led Zeppelin songs that they played an hour ago, and every Tuesday. And, that's just not creative enough when you're going to force massive commercials down people's throats that taste like poison. Nobody wants to eat that. And so radio, for whatever reason, hasn't figured that out yet. And therefore, they shrink every year. They fire a few more people every month and say, we're doing great. But they're not. They're going to shrink until they try something very new. And they're capable, they just are afraid. They're always afraid.
You were an on-air talent for a while, another word for radio DJ. Did you have a wacky radio name? And why did you change to the management side? Probably for some money?
no wacky radio name. And the only reason I ever got into management was to be able to find a way to give artists the freedom that they deserve. You know, if somebody has built a career as successful as any of the people that we've spoken about on this show, they deserve to be able to pick the glass of water up whenever they want and drink it. Why would they be told not to drink on camera? Why? So that's the only reason I've ever been in management, you know, is just as a buffer against bullshit, to be able to get the best talent possible and let them do what they do. That's all we ever want, right? We don't want Larry David's show to suck. We want Louis C.K.'s show to be as great as it possibly can be. So how is that? Louis says, I'll take less money, just leave me alone and let me do the show that I want to do, right? So that's why I'm in management. Same reason.
Do you mind jumping back to the year 1981, sometime in September? What happened? You were a music director for the still existing radio station WAAF near Boston or in Boston, and you heard that there is a little band called the Little Boy Blue and the Cockroaches, who are actually quite famous, not just in the area. And you did something which amazes me to no end, because this is 1 year after John Lennon got shot, and you got very close to the lead singer, the frontman, arguably the greatest rock star in the world. What happened, and would you care to tell that story, which is a long story, but maybe in a compressed form?
Yeah, I'll try to do the 5-minute version. You know, it's one of the greatest experiences of my life. And, you know, the Cockroaches was the fake name that the men in the Rolling Stones decided to use for a secret club gig that we put together in 1981. So I, you know, as you said, the night John Lennon was murdered was the first night that I was ever on the radio being paid professionally. And, you know, for many people, that remains one of the worst days of our life. And a day that is repeated every single time a lunatic fires a gun and kills any human being. But when a lunatic this time fired a gun on a rock star who was the leader of the peace movement, that was a pretty bad day. So I decided that I would do everything that I could to try to not just meet as a fan some of the most important people in our culture, but figure out how to work with them. Why wouldn't we, right? If you and I are sitting here right now, and I said, let's jump in my car and go down to Bruce Springsteen's house and do a project with him, wouldn't we want to do that? I mean, you know, he's one of the greatest living poets of all time, and he happens to be alive during our time. Why wouldn't we want to work with him? So I heard a rumor that Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Ronnie Wood, and Charlie Watts and Bill Wyman, who was still in the band, I heard a rumor that these 5 men were going to move just, you know, 15 minutes down the road from where I lived. And I heard this drunk in a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't believe it. This guy said, no, the Stones are coming. I said, what do you mean? I don't understand. And he said, you're so funny. I love that you have graphics in this show. There they are. That's 81 too. That's 81. That's 81. That's so funny. That's 81. So yeah, so I found out that, you know, the Stones are moving down the street. And I decided in that instant that I was going to turn my life into a major motion picture. And I was going to be this 21-year-old kid that convinced them to, you know, give me a private concert. Why wouldn't we want that? They're living there, so why not? Why not play for me and my friends? And my friends were the fans of WAAF, the radio station that we were running at the time that is still the #1 rock station in all of Boston in the United States. So we convinced Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Bill Wyman, Charlie Watts, Ron Wood, and most importantly, Ian Stewart, who has since passed and is one of the best friends in my life. Ian is really the 6th member of the Rolling Stones. It's just that because he was a little bit older, they never put his face on the cover. But if you know anything about the Rolling Stones, then you know all about Stu. So Mick put Stu.
Boogie for Stu.
Boogie with Stu, Led Zeppelin track, is dedicated to him. So Mick put, I pitched Mick. Mick put Keith and Mick put Stu in charge of figuring this out with me, and we had these secret meetings in a pub that has since burned down called the Paxton Inn in 1981 in Massachusetts, and we planned a secret Rolling Stones concert for 300 of our friends as a rehearsal for the world tour that they were going to start just after that in Philadelphia, which was the Tattoo You album that featured Start Me Up. So yeah, that was that's proof that you can have as much fun as humanly possible if you're just crazy enough to try.
And it worked. And it worked out like this. The story goes, you approached him at the airport, which is a very small airport. It's not the big Boston. I think Logan. It was another one, a smaller one, private planes. And you just went up to him and say, "Hey, I'm Rob. I would like to talk to you." And this is not even a year after Lennon got assassinated, and the bodyguards didn't tackle you. How did that go?
Well, there was a bodyguard. You know, what happened is, I guess I was playing Woodward and Bernstein, the guys who outed Nixon, right? I made believe as a former journalism student that I could, practice a form of gonzo journalism, right? I decided that I had to meet him in a way that was safe and non-threatening. But I had to meet him in order to give him this idea that he should play a secret private club night with me. And so I got a tip that he was going to be flying out of an airport near where we both were living, and the airport is about this big. You can only fit a 4-seat airplane on a 5-foot runway. So I knew where that airport was. So I went out to the airport with my news director, a lady named Lana Jones, and a small tape recorder. And we waited, I forget how many hours, but I knew he was going to show up at that airport. And there was no one there, no one. So hours later, this small 4-seat plane lands in Worcester Airport. And you're right, there was a bodyguard. He's a gentleman named Callahan. Callahan is about 9 feet 7 inches tall. And I know that that's the guy that protects the Rolling Stones. So Callahan comes down the little stairs, and then my friend Gil Markle comes down the stairs. He was the man that owned the recording studio and the farm that housed the Rolling Stones in North Brookfield, Massachusetts. It was called Longview Farm. So out comes Callahan, out comes my friend Gil, and out comes Mick Jagger, just the 3 of them. And then the pilot, of course, but the fact that I knew Gil meant that the security guard did not have to snap my neck like a twig. And then I walked up to Mick Jagger and introduced myself and asked if I could speak to him. And I had a microphone in my hand, shaking like I had Parkinson's disease. And he said, "Sure, I got to take a piss first." And he went to the bathroom and came out, and we got to talk, and that's how it happened.
Sorry to interrupt. Have you ever found that tape? There was rumors that you were looking for it. Have you found it?
I haven't found it in the last many years. I do have to find it. I think that they have it at NBC because it.
You mean WANBC?
Yeah, that one. When I got the interview, he hadn't spoken to anyone for a long time. He was in he was in a private cycle of his career. the interview was syndicated at the time on all the NBC radio stations. You know, I'll have to find it. Yeah, it was fun.
And then one of the greatest kicks for you, and you were 21 at that time, you got to introduce the band.
Yeah.
So you could say the words, and there's only one way to introduce the Rolling Stones. That's a verdict. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the greatest rock and roll band in the world, the Rolling Stones, and then you get off the stage because it's burning.
No, I altered it. That's the way they're always introduced if you're a Stones fan. So I added a line. I said, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot fucking believe this, Rolling Stones. And then they came out.
But I mean, after that, for a Stones fan, there is not much to live for, but you still tried and continued. Did that change your life in a personal way, I imagine, but did that change your way in your life in a professional way, that people saw you with different eyes? You were a very young man, and they said, this Rob guy, you got to keep an eye on him. He gets things done. Did that happen for you?
Yeah, no, it did. It was that was an unintended consequence of just going for the greatest fun you could ever go for. So, yes, it was nice. It was helpful. It created a lot of other opportunities to have more fun. I mean, we not long after that convinced Bono to do the first ever large-scale U2 stadium arena concert in that same town, you know. So you know, it opened the door to a lot of fun that we were able to have as a true rock radio station, a radio station that used to have an entire staff of people playing the music that they loved. That was very revolutionary, and now almost seems sadly insane. But that's how it used to be.
Let me ask you a little thing, which is not necessarily has something to do with you, but did you ever experience the famous payola? Did anybody ever approach you with payola? We give you whatever your pleasure is.
Well, you know, what we're talking about is the time period in the 1980s, right? The famous
high time.
Yeah, high times, good times. The famous stories of payola were largely much earlier in the history of American radio in the United States, where it was normal practice, and there are many books that have been written about this, for radio record promotion people to actually pay cash to disc jockeys in order to create hit records. That's a fact. By the time our generation got in, that was much less of a reality and much more of a myth. But there's no question that the radio people back in the 1970s and 1980s were definitely introduced to a lot of fun by the record promotion people that were pursuing their friendship and their airplay. So yeah, those were really, really fun times.
For the young people, before there was the internet, the coolest thing on the planet, entertainment-wise, was MTV, and you worked for it. Would you care to talk about your times at MTV? You were there in a time when it was established. You weren't there in the very early days, 81, 82, but you got there when MTV was a juggernaut, and if you wanted to be cool, you had to be on MTV, and you created Behind the Music. And I want to ask you, did anybody come to you, a band, can we do Behind the Music? And you said, nah, you're not famous enough. Okay, how about Where Are They Now? Did that happen? A couple of anecdotes maybe about MTV and VH1.
Well, you know, I mean, at the time that I was in rock radio was fun and rock radio was free. At the time that stopped being fun and free, I looked for the next best place to be, and that seemed to me to be MTV in the 1980s, when they were reinventing the idea of what a rock and roll radio station could be, largely with disc jockeys, those 5 now legendary VJs video jockeys had come largely, the five of them, from rock radio. They were DJs. And so, you know, the original decade of MTV was really like a radio station with pictures. And when I got there, we were still playing almost 100% music video programming, with only one game show called Remote Control and one world-changing television show called Yo MTV Raps. That's
Dr. Dre and Lover.
Yeah, that's the show that helped birth hip-hop to the world, because a few men named Peter Doherty and Ted Demme, these two Einsteins, saw the future, stole the opportunity, owned the opportunity to steal the freedom that they knew they could steal from a little corporation back then called MTV, and put a show on that could completely change consciousness across the globe for no money. You know, so I saw things like that and said, yes, I would like to be one of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who work there. So I went and stayed for about 12 years doing all kinds of different things at MTV and VH1, because they also are not as free and fun as they used to be when I worked there. But when I worked there, there were people like Ted and people like Peter who could create world-changing ideas and put them on television in, you know, a day or two, rather than the way media normally works, which is you and me trying to get a meeting for 6 months. Then we get a meeting, but they reschedule it 3 times. Then we go into the meeting finally 9 months later, and we have a chat. Then they forget to write us back. Then we have to email them 500 times. Then they never call us back. You know, at MTV, you could just come up with an idea and put it on fucking television, and the whole world would see it. That's pretty good. So, and that's because there were people there in charge, like the people we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. Tom Freston, Judy McGrath, Doug Herzog, Van Toffler. These were women and men who decided to hire artistic, fun, free-thinking people and give them the power of a worldwide media outlet. That was pretty rebellious, and they deserve statues for doing that.
And many went on to do bigger and better things. The before mentioned Ted Demme, he was probably, I'm just guessing now, responsible for the very remarkable Dennis Leary spot where he walked up and down with a cigarette, which wouldn't happen today. I got 3 words for you.
Yeah.
That was Ted Demme, who went on to Glow and many other great things, but he's passed on, unfortunately, now. But that was the same Ted Demme who probably met Dennis Leary at that time, and many people went on, not only Pauly Shore.
Pauly Shore. I'll tell you a funny Pauly Shore story. In the video for my first wedding, the moment comes where you have to go to your best man and get the wedding ring. So that moment came, and I went to get the ring from my best friend Mike's hands, but something happened where there was an unusual delay. And because I was aware of the fact that it was being filmed, I immediately started going like this with my hands, which, when my grandchildren see this video, will make absolutely no sense, but you'll be one of the only people still alive who knows that I was imitating Pauly Shore.
The Wheeze.
The Weasel.
The Weasel, right. That's right. The Weasel is Carolla's friend. So it was a great time being, you've been always you were always lucky to be at the center, at the vanguard of entertainment. And right now you are very established with My Damn Channel. You're looking at the 10-year mark. In internet years, that's more. You mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, internet years are, I think they're more like dog years. Business and internet, 1 year, how many years?
I think the actual calculation would be 18 years for every year. I think that's the math. Yeah. No, so, it's funny. Look, you know what somebody said? We had a great conversation last year about this. I got to meet two of the most important people in Hollywood. One is a man named Ted Sarandos, who's responsible for the original series on Netflix. And the other man I met in the very same event is named Brian Grazer, who works with Ron Howard creating some of the greatest entertainment that the planet has ever seen. And I met both of these guys at this one tiny event. And first I went up to Ted and I said, Ted, can I talk to you for 1 minute? He said, sure. I said, I'm Rob Barnett. I run this stupid thing called My Damn Channel. And he said, I know. And I said, are you trying to be polite or do you actually know who we are? He said, no, I know. I said, well, that's a shock. I would never expect it, and I really appreciate it. But I said, let me just say that what you have done at Netflix is the biggest game-changing event in the last 8 or 9 or 10 years of anyone who's ever made original series, because now he was able to communicate the idea worldwide that some of the best content that you and I can possibly find right after this interview is on the internet. You don't need to pay hundreds of dollars to a television company to receive all this great content. So he really is the Christopher Columbus in my view. And then that same week, Brian Grazer hired one of my best employees at My Damn Channel, a lady named Melissa Schneider, one of the smartest, best people I've ever worked with. And they created their own new digital studio, Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, and I thanked him and said, the fact that you two are making this move into digital will also change the world. And I said, I feel like I've been stuck in the first inning of a baseball game for 9 years. And Brian Grazer looked at me, we were in the men's room, and he said, it's now. And that's all he said. And that was enough to inspire me for the next 5 years. That if this is the beginning of some of the best content you and I have ever seen free on the computer, then imagine how great it's going to be 5 years from tonight.
Let me ask you one of the final questions. The monetization model, the financing of My Damn Channel. Can you talk about it a little bit? There is not much advertisement going on in the clips because you have another model. Would you care to talk about it?
Yes. It's a little bit technical maybe to the average fan of great content, but the average fan of any content knows that you no longer really want to see ads on television. You don't want to see banner ads on this computer screen. You don't want to see annoying video pre-roll commercials before the content. It's a necessary evil, but if I gave you the opportunity to not have to see it, you will take that opportunity every single time. So this creates a great problem with all of what's happening on the internet. There are really only 3 ways to go. Some form of advertising. A viewer must pay their own money, just like when they go to a movie or a show. Or in another respect, if it's not a subscription model, maybe it is some kind of fan funding. And Adam Carolla has proven that there are 17 or 18 ways to make money, not just from doing commercials on the internet. So it takes a real smart mind to figure a lot of this out. What we did is we were able to convince almost all of the advertisers we've worked with for the last 9 years that if they're going to be involved with premium content, then they should pay premium dollars to actually figure out a way to help present content that does not suck. And that does not mean by just stuffing commercials in it, because no one wants that. So there are smart advertisers, smart brands, smart advertising agencies who've known this for all 8 or 9 years that we've been in business, and they will continue to get smarter as the years go on. The Grateful Dead did a live concert a few weeks ago for Madison Square Garden. Perfect quality on the internet for hours and hours and hours. And there was a tiny little American Express logo in the lower right of the screen, and that's it. No commercial interruption, but I'm sure that American Express wrote a big fat check for the Grateful Dead and John Mayer, as they should have, because millions of deadheads wanted to experience that. So that's American Express thinking like the present, not just the future. That's the present. And more people are realizing that there's got to be a way for you and I to make money that's not offending our audience. And if we can figure that out in partnership with someone that has a bank account, then that's a smart person that we should be working with.
Very interesting and a very innovative way to look at things. Do you actually keep production studios somewhere in New York City, or is that some sort of everybody produces their own content and they send it to you? Do you actually have studios, or have to pay studio rent, or maybe even own it?
Yeah, most of what we've done in our years has been to find talent who may not work under our own roof each day. They're out in the world creating their art. We pay these people and put them into production, which again is different than the way almost every other network has done it, by asking you to work for free. So we with all the original content, we did do some acquired programming. But with all the original content, it was never rev share. It was always, we pay you. We did build studios in both New York and Los Angeles because we were one of the first companies to be paid a lot of money by YouTube back about, this is 4 years ago. They selected a small number of companies and paid premium 7-figure deals to be able to start putting out a lot more quality content on a more consistent basis. And when that happened, we were able to launch studios. But most of the work that we've done over all the years has been in-house, out-of-house.
YouTube is thinking about going to a paid model. What's your assessment of that? Is that a good idea to change the concept of YouTube, which used to be free, and it's very hard to convince people to pay for something which they are used to getting for free? What's your assessment of that?
Well, there's a brand new announcement that's just been made in the last few weeks about a service called Red, which will be a subscription service in addition to the service that you currently know as YouTube. So they have made several experiments over the years with what you just described. Well, I describe it as trying to get the genie back in the bottle. Right? It took the music industry almost 10 years to recover from the shock of Napster and figure out how they could possibly get back to making coin. It's taking the video community almost exactly as long to do that. And every smart person in the world is trying to figure out how to get a piece of the genie back in the bottle.
But you will not say if it's going to work out, or if.
I'm never shy
of the development.
No, I'm never shy with my thoughts or my reaction. It's just unfair and brand new. It's too early, right? It's like, you know, the idea that you would look at like one of the best late night shows on television and decide your entire future and fate for that artist on the first show is ridiculous. You know, that's one of the things that's terribly wrong with the way people consume media. You know, great art takes time to develop. That's a fact. It's always been a fact. You know, it's unfair to pass immediate judgment on folks.
Now that you that you're so established. Were there mistakes made? I didn't see any, but maybe you see it now, and you are now serene enough to talk about it. Was there a mistake you did in the beginning of mydamnchannel.com?
Mistakes. You know, we talk about that a bit, as you do when you're an entrepreneur. You know, a crazy high wire act that every entrepreneur knows very well. So yeah, there's always. You okay there? Mic action?
No, it just fell. It just fell down. I just have to.
Sandy again. Hold on, I'll wait. You're good. No, you know, everyone looks back. It's more important to look forward as an entrepreneur than it is to look back. But I think that you know, we have always believed that the most important thing you need to do in media is build a brand. And the second most important thing you need to do is work with the best talent. And the third most important thing you need to do is build an audience that is large enough to do the fourth thing, which is make enough money to succeed and continue. So do much more to the tenacity of my business partner, Warren, than credit I could ever take. We're still here. You know, it's been an amazing ride. There's a million things that we might have done differently, but if we had it to do all over again, we'd probably be right about where we are.
Rob, thank you very much for doing this. Let me ask you one last thing about your beautiful state of New Jersey. As a foreigner, I always hear the jokes about New Jersey. I've been to New Jersey. I've been to Asbury Park. I've been there, and I love it. And there's more Springsteen, Bon Jovi, and Sinatra being played on the radio, which is the best America has to offer. Why all the jokes about New Jersey, please? Please explain that to a foreigner.
Well, I might not be able to answer it because I'm a proud living member of this gang. You know, there it is. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've loved living out here. I've lived all over the place, but I probably lived here more than most. It's a beautiful spot with a lot of trees and a lot of green and a lot of quiet and a lot of really, really good normal people. So yeah, we take jokes and you know, but if those jokes end up relating back to Bruce Springsteen and Tony Soprano, I'm good with that.
I remember a few years back there was an awful smell coming over the city. The city is always Manhattan or New York City. And everybody suspected this is coming from New Jersey, but without even checking. Tragic, it came from New Jersey. But that's the attitude all the people in the city have, and it's just a big city thing, I guess, that people in the city feel superior to those outside. We have that in Munich, in Hamburg, it's the same thing. It's in all cities. The city folk feel they are superior to the ones around. But if you're really smart, you live in Jersey because there is a tax thing. I remember when I was there, there was no tax in New Jersey on jeans or something like that. And if you're stupid, you buy in Manhattan where you pay the highest taxes in the country. But if you're smart, you go to New Jersey and buy the jeans without the sales.
You are so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, you know, look, if we can't be happy where we live, then we're living in the wrong place, right?
Absolutely. Rob, thank you so much. And you have a big holiday coming up. Everything's prepared. Yeah. They're partying at your place. You're going somewhere for Thanksgiving, which is a huge holiday in the States.
I'm going to try to cook for the first time in my life a real meal. I mean, I'm a good breakfast guy, but I'm doing the whole traditional big holiday meal here in the States. So pray for me.
Okay, thank you very much. So short before the big holiday to take time for me. And I want to say, big fan, was very interesting, very enlightening. And thank you so much for doing it. And I'll send you all the links and I chop it up a little bit. I'm not the video, but the audio, I chop it up for my podcast. And it's been a huge pleasure talking to one of my idols. And without, I didn't even know that. The 1981 gig I read about, I just got back from India. I was about the same age. And I got back and I said, what? The Stones did a gig? And then it was your gig. And so I'm totally amazed that I could talk to you.
I will see you at the next Stones gig. Thank you so much. It's so great.
Love and peace, peace and love. Hey
Thanks.
now,
Love
Baba
you.
Booey.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Baba Booey.